we're live. So that must mean this is Thursday. Yes, okay. And here we are with our last episode of the Spring 2018 Conscious Aging series. And as many of you know, I'm Mark Davenport, and I missed last week because I was in the hospital learning a bit about me and a lot about Italian hospitals, which was interesting, so let's say. So I hope I don't fall out with a coughing fit, but we'll continue at this point. I'm back, and we'll proceed. And I'm here, of course, as usual, with
Heidi.
Heidi, yes.
Yeah, and with many guests who were in our series and had their own episode, and you can watch that on the wisdomfactory.net, Conscious Aging. And we have, let's go from my left to my right. There is Gina Donaldson. Say hello, Gina.
Just taking it off mute. Hello, everyone. Gina Donaldson, coming from beautiful Victoria, British Columbia, south of the mainland U.S. border, overlooking United States and the gorgeous mountains.
Overlooking the whole United States. That's a big
view.
view.
It's quite a view. Yeah.
Then we have Kimberly Dark from another beautiful place.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Dark. Yes, I am from another beautiful place, although it's raining here now in Hawaii. Happy to join you.
Thank you for doing that. And then we have Kyrie Carpenter, who seems to be in a dome.
Yeah.
Yes, Kyrie Carpenter here. I'm joining you from San Francisco, and yeah, I'm in like an egg chair.
It's wonderful.
That's beautiful.
Happy to be with you.
Thank you. And then there is Susan Faring.
Hi, I'm delighted to be here, and I'm calling from beautiful Victoria, British Columbia as well.
And last not least, in this row is Sarah Alter.
Hi, I'm Sarah Alter, and I'm in near Portland, Oregon, on the Pacific West Coast, citizen of the world.
Okay.
Then there was in the plan also Jane Rogers from Scotland, but she couldn't come because she had some problems with her parents. And, you know, they're talking about aging, and she has aging parents, and she had to go there. And
damn it, I'm somebody's parent. Yeah.
Anyway, so before we start, I wanted to, how can I say that? Send our condolences as we are talking about conscious aging. One of our guests in the series was with us only 4 weeks ago.
Right.
He suddenly died last Monday. It is Tom Christensen. And
and later I found his wishing me a quickly return to health. So I was already in the hospital.
Yeah, so it's a little bit strange. We are talking about conscious aging and doing a whole lot of things. We were talking about preparing bringing our act together, or how you say, or doing yoga, or doing theater, or writing books, or having sort of coaching, therapy, that was all your topics.
Yeah.
And we do a lot, but this is doesn't mean that we might not die in all ages.
In any age.
At any age, So just to keep it in mind when it comes very near. And I have to say, it came very near to me too, when I heard that he probably has cancer. And worst case scenario, at night sleeping, it's not really so easy. And so when it touches you, it's something else than when you just talk about it. So
so you don't plan how you react.
So, but we want to celebrate. We don't want to talk all the time about the inevitable. Embracing the inevitable was one of the topics. No?
Yeah.
But we want to talk about what was I would like you to present a little bit your approach to conscious aging so that people might be inspired to go to your website page on the wisdomfactory.net, and there are all the people under their name listed. And this was series 4.
Yes.
Yeah. So you find it on the series 4 and all the people. So try to inspire them in a short, let's say 1 minute elevator pitch, even 2 minutes, it's fine. And who wants to start?
I'll start.
All right.
I'll start. My presentation on conscious aging was called Live It. And the most important thing about conscious aging is making a conscious decision to live well, and then everything that I did, the mind and the body are connected, and working on one improves the other. And then, Mark, I wanted to talk about going to the hospital in Italy. Let's just go off topic for a minute, but it is planning about aging, and that is my daughter and her husband are trying to figure out where they're going to retire. And one of my daughter's cert criteria is, what language do I want to be speaking when I'm in the hospital? And
she didn't hear what you said. We were muted.
Yeah.
He said you definitely want to speak Italian. And you know what? When I got him out of the hospital, he talked to me in Italian.
Yeah.
So he learned something there.
Well, she speaks Italian and she speaks French now. You know, she's been married, 14 years, something like that, to her French husband. And they lived in France for 6 years. But she's thinking about Greece, she's thinking about Italy, she's thinking about France for various reasons, but that was one of her cert criteria, and I thought it was very interesting because that is something to be conscious of when you are older, is medical care.
Sure.
And
well, one important point in Italy's favor here is it has 9 days in the hospital and many tests both before and during, and no charge, none. Yeah.
yes, right. That makes a huge difference.
But if you want to have a quick care, or you go into the hospital, because the normal prescriptions take a long time. I have one for the heart thing. It is in September. I have an appointment. So, or you pay, or you have to wait. So, or you go in the hospital. So these are the things.
Right.
They live
in England now, which is NHS, and that's very interesting.
We hear about that. Yes.
I just, before we go over to somebody else, I wanted to say Zara has in her presentation given a platform to do exercises. And I must say I'm already on day 18 of the very easiest part of it. And but today I skipped.
Well, and just so everybody knows, the platform is called Darebee. Darebee, Darebee, and all of the exercises are with your own body. So you just are always working with yourself, for yourself, doing the exercises. You don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to have, big gym equipment. You don't need any of those things. And they are very challenging, and they are at levels, and so it's easy to go at your own pace and at the same time challenge yourself. Really amazing platform.
Yeah, thank you.
Dorothy.
And to say about why we do this series, it's not only to get to know you, but also ourselves to get some more understanding and get more inspiration about that. And I found out that often I really follow the things which our guests suggest. It's really amazing, you know. Not all the time, everything, because the day has only about
24 hours.
24 hours, yeah. It should have a little more, but anyway.
Right.
Okay, let's, somebody else who wants to go.
Oh.
Hello, I will.
Yes.
So I think I joined your community when I read a very wonderful article from, I think, Sweden on gerotranscendence. Do you remember that article? It was marvelous and very inspiring, and so that's what really piqued my interest. I'm somebody who's worked in private practice as a psychotherapist for 30 years or so, and I'm narrowing my focus now to people who are going through the retirement transition. My interest is helping them move away from internalized ageism, and also to recognize cultural ageism that still exists, and how to move into this latter third of life as a potential time of real expansion and growth, and to hold that as a vision of what's possible. And I find myself really getting more and more excited about passing that message along, not just to elders, but just in my communities in general.
Yeah, and I want to let everybody know that I'm very busy, growing very fast right now.
Good. Yeah. Yeah, it's I think it's a crash course sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, who else is inspired?
I'll go ahead and comment. Kimberly Dark. I did a program for you all on the aging yoga body, and I facilitate yoga retreats that are focused on bodies that don't normally think they either can do yoga or are entitled to do yoga, including aging bodies, disabled bodies, fat bodies. I use the term fat, by the way, as a neutral descriptive term. And so part of the aging yoga body is about really coming into what yoga is about, which is, the breath and the body today, that we can't practice with the body we used to have or the body we might have next week. We have to practice with this one, no matter how it shows up. And there's great joy in that. And there's also, equanimity and contentment and, with no expectation of what the practice will give us, and with no clinging to the past with practice. So these are I do 5-day retreats that are focused on the body, and specifically, I like what you just said a moment ago about cultural biases as well, because that's a lot of what we're dealing with and how they become internalized, and we come to feel like, oh, well, I can't do that, or I shouldn't be doing that in this body. So that's my contribution.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yoga is a very good thing. And I don't do it at the moment, but I do Qigong.
And Pilates.
And Pilates, but not so often.
And, I'm not even actually attached to yoga. Any mindfulness practice that brings us into joy and movement is really my greatest interest.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Gina here. So my message to people is that we have a lot of life left, and we're not done yet. And that's a good thing, because what a great gift it is to actually age. And as you're aging yourself and even examining your own views on aging, There's some work to be done both internally and externally. So my view is if you get everything in your household organized in a way that if anything happens to you, because we know that neither death nor car accidents or life plays fair, it doesn't happen on our timetable, you can really focus on getting the best out of life because you've taken care of the necessities. And so it's just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it's more like my levels of responsibility are make sure that I'm not burdening my family, make sure that I'm putting everything in place so that my wishes are respected. And then I can spread the joy of aging. And, you know, I'm coming up, my husband and I are both coming up to our 60th birthday. And every now and then, even I find myself going, wow, look at me doing this. I'm almost 60. I'm like, yeah, but you're going to be doing this at 80, or at least something really a lot of fun. So I find that message is a lot easier to get across if you put the fundamentals in place. So up we go in our beautiful pyramid of aging.
Thank you.
Yes.
So last not least, our youngest member here in the row.
Yeah, so I'm Kyrie, and my talk was on playful aging, embracing the inevitable, which is the same title of my thesis that I did when I was also studying psychotherapy. So similar background to Susan there. And while I was studying, I got really interested in geropsych, and I did my clinical training with elders living with dementia, and just sort of started to notice that there were people who seemed to be suffering more and less in relatively the same conditions, you know, with the same diagnoses, living in the same location. And I got really curious about, well, what's going on here? And kind of like Susan highlighted too. And what I noticed was ageism was really what was going on there, and ageism manifesting as a resistance to aging and being anti-aging, both internally and in our culture. And so then I got really curious about, well, what would embracing aging look like? And PLAY is an acronym. You can watch the talk to hear more about that. And so now, and then I got really inspired by that, and I do a lot of work around raising awareness that basically just that we are aging and that it's easier and better when we embrace it. I call myself a crone in training. I'm a big fan of myths and fairy tales, and I love the archetype of the crone, how multifaceted she is. And I think it's a word that needs to be reclaimed out of its definition. In America, it gets associated usually with only the negative side of it. But yeah, so I call myself a crone in training and really try to raise awareness about how at every single age, as you guys mentioned, I'm the youngest member of the panel, it's really important to embrace aging and to really own the phase of life you're in and celebrate it. We have a pretty big obsession with adulthood being the peak here in America, but wanting to really embrace whatever phase of life you're in and cultivate the ones you're going into.
Yeah, I think this is very important because as young people, we want to be always older, no? And then you go to university, and then you want to already have your job in place, and then you want to have the children, and then you want to have them big, you know, grown up. It's never right.
Yeah, you never get there. You're like, okay, I want to get to there, I want to get to there, I want to get to there, and then you want to go back. But I don't know anyone who's like, you know, it's so rare to just be happy right here, right now. So I mean, tying into a lot of what everyone was saying, you have the being mindful and conscious. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I wanted to point out as I was looking at this string of people, I was the only male face, and not that I have any problem with that, but I was thinking that there are male voices who talk about aging, you know, but they're not here today. They were invited, but they're not here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there's one particular aspect that I think is kind of male slanted, and at least I haven't seen any great female proponents of this aspect, and that is, you know, life extension, you know, where actually we don't look at geriatrics and taking care of the problems that any particular old person may have, but a sort of gerontology, which is a study of aging itself. And this is a bit more of a third person perspective on the phenomena. But there's actually been some interesting progress. You may know of some of this, I think, but I just want to mention one that's quite promising, and that is the concept of telomeres, which are like structures on the ends of chromosomes, and they gradually shrink as we get older. With each cell division, they seem to lose a bit, and when they are gone, then the cell no longer divides, which means, whoop, something's going to get lost here. And we have discovered a substance which is called telomerase, excuse me, which can help these structures grow and stay constant, and which is very, very promising. Things are happening, and I don't know how widely spread this information is. I think it may be a more male orientation to be interested in study and stuff. But anyway, I wanted to mention that and just say a word for the men who are here today.
Would it be okay if I brought forward a male voice? Would that suit? I'm
Sure.
remembering an interview that you two did with a wonderful father-son team, and the father was I think in his 80s and had cancer. He had cancer and had come through it, and he was talking about how grateful he was to have lived this long, because now he was experiencing awe and wonder in ways that he really hadn't before. And he felt that he was able to love in a much more expansive way than he ever had before. He talked about going and sitting in, I think, Tim Hortons or somewhere, and just loving. And I thought that was a marvelous male voice.
Yeah, it was, and it was Christopher Foster, and
Yeah.
it was in the first series.
Mhm.
It was
Well,
lovely.
Almost 1.5 years ago. It was very lovely, and I
Mhm.
invite everybody to see that. It was so heartwarming,
Mhm.
this old man, when he talked about love to his son,
Yeah.
online and
Mhm.
public in a way, and they had never done that before. So it was really touching.
Since you're talking about gender and social stereotyping, I can't help myself I'm a sociologist by training, in addition to teaching yoga. Part of the reason that you probably have more women talking about themes like these is that, there's a lot of gender segregation. You just mentioned medical research. There are more likely to be men in those fields. There are more likely to be women in devalued helping professions and doing emotional labor, and so I don't think that it's that men are more interested in research. You certainly do have some researchers on this panel, but I think that in terms of why are there not men talking about helping people with aging, well, because that still is the helping professions are still dominated by women. So there's my 2 cents on why are we all women on a panel like this. It's predictable, even if you did invite a few men.
Yeah, it is certainly predictable. I think it is more the natural inclination in this time of the cosmos, let's say, of the earth, that women are going ahead and trying to figure things out, while men are sort of watching and saying, oh God, me too.
How do I fit into all this?
How can I do that? And so there are still many men, more involved men, say that men are about 50 years behind women. So that's no wonder that we are more, let's say, courageous to go into the inside world. While the men find this still a little bit awkward. Not all men. But
what was wrong with that old world?
Yeah.
So
What was wrong? Yeah, when I kept my emotions inside and didn't let one know. By the way, just going back to our personal situation, we have done a commitment that to be very truthful and to talk about the emotions which will come up in the next few months, years, or whatever is in front of us, and never to not say a thing because you want to save the other or to not to embarrass the other, which for me is a form of manipulation. And for me, only the truth is acceptable, and make it as, as gentle as possible, but don't
the truth.
turn it around, that's...
I wanted to sort of chime in on this a little bit too. I think it's interesting for a lot of, men, particularly white straight men, aging is the first time that they're experiencing discrimination in their lifetime. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about ageism is it's, one of the most intersectional of the diversity factors. And it can really, if we're lucky enough to live long enough, you experience it on both ends of your life. So you can remember what it was like when you were younger, but then also if you're lucky enough to live long enough and experience it again, it really gives you a chance to feel what that's like, to be marginalized. And it really is a great starting place for us all to come together and talk about these things. So I sort of wanted to put that in there too. And I think that that makes it even more tempting for men in comparison to women to hold on to that adulthood and the power that was in that, whereas for women, we're already used to, in some respect, having certain standards put on us that don't jive with who we feel we are. So we already have practice our whole life at that. So yeah, there is a bit of catching up that has to happen. I wanted to sort of make that note. And then I think it's interesting on the life extension stuff too. It weaves together, but that we are not yet very good at embracing elderhood. And I'm just sort of curious what we would do with all of these extra years. And I get really worried that we're just going to have people trying to continue to extend adulthood. And it's just going to end up perpetuating ageism even further instead of really embracing. I feel like I would be all for life extension if we had all these people that really wanted to embrace elderhood and what it has and give back in it. But I don't feel like those are the people that are trying to extend life. It's the cult of adulthood for sure, as a male in the field, Dr. Thomas would say.
Yeah. Yes, I want to know who's going to pay my old age pension, for another 10 years or 15 years that they didn't expect they'd have to. These shifts in demographics can make a mess of an economy, for example.
Well, you have to work longer until 80. That's it.
Oh, great.
Young people don't find work anymore, but you have to work until 80. No, I'm a little...
There's so many considerations here.
Yeah. I just want to chime in for the fact that it's not me doing the moderation. You can talk whenever you like. I don't have to intervene all the time, okay?
Mm-hmm. As long as you don't fight.
As long as you don't fight. I just really resonated with your comment, Kyrie, around what are we going to do? How do we find meaning and purpose, vitality that is really kind of, in a way, appropriate to that last third of life? And how do we encourage those of us that feel that some sense of leadership in that? How to encourage the people that we do influence into roles of mentorship, into roles of holding what we really do have in those later years that we're fortunate enough to have, and how do we care for our communities in a new and different way that is rich? I think that's just really an important conversation to have, and I see that there's lots of people out there having it these days, so it's good. Thank you.
Okay, Gina, I mute you just a moment. So you were saying something, but I would like to acknowledge here that we have a visitor in our comment stream. Let me find it here. Oops, where is it gone?
Kababa.
Yeah, and he is from Madison. And he is a good friend of Tom Christensen, who passed away this week. I recently learned about your group, and through him, hence decided to tune in today. So thank you very much, and please come back. And
Yes.
yeah.
And Kaba, I think I just admitted you to our Masterminding Aging group.
Oh yeah, also that, yeah. So we are very, very, very sorry about Tom. We announced it at the beginning.
Yeah.
It was sort of a shock for all of us who have known him. So welcome here, and you are welcome also to the Masterminding Integral Aging Facebook group.
That's what I meant. Can I say that?
Yeah, you said it, but maybe I wanted to repeat it. Okay. Okay, over to you all. Nobody talks. Mark said he could go home, or everybody can go home.
Oh, I'm sorry. We are home.
Oh, we are home.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe the others.
I'm curious how the other panel members got interested in, it's gaining traction for sure, being aware of embracing aging and fighting ageism, but I'm just curious what path led you guys all to be interested in this stuff.
I've always been interested in embracing life, so I don't think there was much of a transition. I don't think about it. It's like pitting men against women, or old against young, or adulthood against the last third of life, and slapping labels on things. I think it's about being ourselves and learning how to integrate joy and celebration into our life at whatever age we are. And it just so happens that now I am older, and but this is nothing new for me. And so that's why I'm remaining silent in these discussions, because I don't have a program. I don't sell anything. I already talked with Mark and Heidi about this. I just have a belief, and that training ourselves to think. So when Mark is investigating scientific research, gosh, I hope that is not just a male thing. I mean, I was a scientist for many years, and that the focus of life at any age is to be there in the present and enjoy what is there. And I think that what you all call adulthood has a tendency to push those things aside for striving. And if we cease noticing in the moment what is there, trees budding out, I mean, really simple things, trees budding out, and kitties lying in the sun, or whatever it might be, but the things that are right around us, not looking somewhere else for it, not going somewhere else for it, but I have a friend in England. He's always talks about blooming where you are planted, and I really embrace that attitude toward life, that experiencing what we have around us. And I think a focus on not so much discontent, but on what is there that enriches our lives. So, I mean, as we grow older, our body does change, and it does not do the things it used to do. And I just recently had surgery in January, and 5 years ago I had cancer, and I went, and they do this pre-thing in the hospital, at least at Scripps in Southern California. They have this long checklist, and there's 3 pages of have you ever, and I kept checking no, and the intake nurse is like, wow, you're really healthy. And I'm like, yes, except for this, minor thing, cancer. And that at any age, surprising things can come into our life. We talked about this a little bit earlier, and that it is our attitude about life that carries us through those physical and or emotional impacts that come as surprises, and that staying aware and keeping our bodies in form, whatever that may be, at whatever age, and enriching our mind and training our mind and learning to new things, and doing the actual exercises. I talked in the presentation about the way that the first information that comes to us is through our eyes and vision, and that there are actual physical exercises that we can do to improve our vision. And as we do these things, we are growing new neural networks in our brain, so that at whatever age we are, the more that we use our brain and the more that we use our body, the more in tune we are with the life that is now. Okay, that's it. That's all I had to say.
Well, from my perspective, I found that when I was growing up, I was always surrounded by family elders, and that was a great connection for me. But when I joined the Navy and I found myself pretty much in a demographic working environment that stopped at 55, and even after the Navy, I worked for an organization who's now being exposed for people leaving early. Same thing. So I bumped up against an ageist culture, but also realized that I don't think most of the people in my family realized how long they were going to live. I don't think they put nearly as much work into living the later third of life that they did, growing up and being children and then being adults. And then, okay, now I'm older and now I don't have to do anything. Don't have to do anything. This is the best time. And it was just, for me, starting to realize that there's all this opportunity, and so many of us are going to live to be 100, that we should be caring as much, and I think more, about this Act 3 or third half of life, and what we can do for ourselves, what we can do for our community, what we can do for families, because we have rich wisdom, and this is why I love the title Wisdom Factory. Man, we're pumping it out. And so that it really was quite an awakening for me, just to have people having those discussions. And now I really want other people to, as I said, wake up to, we've got this beautiful life ahead of us, and every day should be a treasure. So that's why I got interested.
Future. So thinking of the future.
As opposed to worrying about anti-aging. Ageism I worry about. I don't worry about anti-aging. And what I really find, particularly here, the boomers are changing how we've been dealing with aging in terms of warehousing seniors, telling them what time they can have the meals. The boomers are just not putting up with it. So we are changing it. We're saying we have power and we're going to use it.
Okay, I see.
I think that for my part, I mean, my work has always been focused on how we live in bodies in culture, right? And the idea that there is body hierarchy and what that does for us, because it is not a neutral event to have a stigmatized body. It harms our health, it harms our ability to connect with others. And so, I have been looking at that based on, things like gender and race and size, having a fat body. I mean, I was fat and athletic most of my life. And now I'm arthritic and, 50 this year. So, having this experience myself of sort of understanding the intersections of these things within my body as a yoga practitioner, somebody who offers wellness experiences to others, that is, you know, I think that is something that a lot of folks who are in helping professions do well to look at is what is our own embodiment as we work with others, and I offer a retreat on that as well. June of next year there will be one, you know, about kind of looking at how do we find greater peace in the intersections that we inhabit ourselves in order to you know, work differently with others. But you know, so aging in and of itself, it's one thing, right? It's one of the things. It's one of the ways that our bodies are sort of stacked up in a hierarchy of worth, and you know, I'm very interested in how do we dismantle that hierarchy of worth so that older bodies are seen as vibrant and interesting and changing. You know, that the changes are not all about you know, the slide into the grave, but that the changes are acknowledged as you know, part of life. And how do we continue working with these bodies? But all of the other ways that we inhabit our bodies as well. You know, it's not a neutral experience in culture. You know, we have to take a bit of control of, you know, exactly what Zara had just said, of, you know, paying attention to the beauty and the joy in our immediate circumstances, and you know, doing something countercultural in that way.
I think that to make a change like that, we need to foster that kind of perception within people, generally speaking, so that falls away. I know one of those horrible I'll never forget this, one of my horrible parenting moments was I was driving my son off to college with his, you know, box of things for his room and stuff, and I said, "Oh, wow, well, you know, UC Santa Cruz has a women's studies program. Maybe you should start a men's studies program." And he looked at me and said, "Mom, it's about everybody." And I went, okay, well, I goofed up in the moment, but the parenting was right. And so that was many years ago, and I just still believe that it is about everybody. And that I always get nervous when people start slapping labels on things, people, ages, stages of life, all of those things, because it's easy from the perceptual side to put that label on yourself and go, "I'm old." And that is your overriding label. Do you know what I mean? And if you get rid of that label, or I'm fat, or any of those things, if you get rid of the label and focus on who you are, what you're doing in the present, goals that you have that drive you forward to improve your body in whatever way that is, and to enjoy life more in whatever way that is, that this, to me, we have a long way to go, but this to me is the way that we counter that kind of cultural imprint. Mm-hmm. Today we're talking about the imprint on aging, but there are so many cultural imprints. Do you know what I mean? And if you start taking those imprints and slapping them on yourself, you know, all of a sudden you aren't you anymore. You're this collection of label imprints from some cultural perception that maybe isn't even true. So that the best way to be true to life and true to where you are in life is to be true to yourself, and to focus on being yourself, being the best you can be with other people, having empathy and compassion. These are the things that break those molds, Kimberly. That's my belief.
Yeah, I agree with you that we have to take those labels off of ourselves, and that's extremely helpful. But I'm very much in favor of, part of how we remove those labels is by understanding how they got there. That these are, exterior. I mean, stigma is exterior to our bodies and our lives, and so I think that it's important to do both, to take the labels off of ourselves and how they define us, but to understand profoundly what effect those labels have on individuals, that there's an exterior circumstance that must be changed as well for the greater well-being of all, as opposed to, well, just I can do this myself. Like all I need is better self-esteem and I'll be fine. No, there are actual, it's actually harder to get healthcare if you are not articulate, if you are not slender, if you are not, it actually is harder to get a job if you, have certain physical attributes. So those are, those are real cultural circumstances that we are needing to work with, in addition to working with ourselves and finding our own personal sovereignty. I mean, that's a term that I work with quite a bit. That probably is in line with the things that you're talking about. The ability to self-define, but without losing an understanding of broader context.
Yeah. I would also like to say something here, because I'm the conviction that we are creating the culture. That culture is not something which is going on top of us. And so as long as I look on my belly and say, oh, that, or, I don't accept myself, how can I, be different than all the others? When I did the feminine power training, I did the commitment to myself to watch me every day naked in a mirror and listen to what comes up. This is two, and this is two, and this is two, and this is two. And it took a long, long time, I think about 3 or 4 months, until I could watch myself without coming all the time immediately all these voices. So what I want to say, if we want to change that, we cannot do it by asking the culture to change. I think we have to change ourselves. We have to inspire others to see themselves, accept themselves, if they are fat or slim and blah, 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 whatever they are, whatever you can have in your body, or also in your expression, face, and so on. And then show this also to the others, that you are, I don't want to say proud, but that you are fine with what it is. And then you are, first of all, much less vulnerable towards for attacks. And you give an inspiration to others to do that too. And then we will change the culture. That's my idea of culture change.
Oh, I think that's so true. I worked for so many years with young people in schools. But I dropped in out of the sky. I was either the science teacher, because there was no science curriculum in elementary school in California, in grades kindergarten through 8. Horrifying thought, but it was true. Or I was a poet in the school. So I came in with science, and I came in with using language. And the work that needed to be done with kids was that work, Heidi. It is that they learn to be themselves, and then to, as I said earlier, with empathy and compassion, look at other people, their peers, and make those changes. So I just totally agree with what Heidi says, that it starts here, and we can't make changes in the culture. I have many conversations with my online friend David Amerland about this, making changes in culture. that we do it one by one through our conversations with other people, with having forums like this, with talking to a 14-year-old when you're in your 70s, and having real conversations, instigating real conversations. I've been labeled an instigator, a disturber, whatever, but yes, I am. That's my role. I don't have a school. I don't have workshops. I just one-on-one. And I think that's how we make change, that we work on ourselves to influence the people that are in our circle of life.
Yeah, and also defend people who cannot defend themselves, because only lately there was a girl, I think a 16-year-old girl, fat girl, when we want to say that, and she did suicide. And then she was even then still harassed. Oh, that's the way of fat people on Facebook, or where it was, you know, it came into the newspapers, and I found it really appalling, you know, and things like that need really to be addressed, the harassment of kids. So we have to take a stand for these things too, and not only think about us. That's our personal development.
Yes, kids have a hard time.
So I would just like to go back to the evolution of the elder. Mm-hmm. And my own experience of aging, and I'm now in my early 70s, is that it's taken me a long time to move away from my own internalized ageism in terms of being able to actually step forward in a place of almost, well, the two words that come are pretty weird, but I'm going to say them as pride and dignity, to come forward with who I am in my nowness, which is, I am considered to be an elder in this society now, and I'm owning it. But it's taken me a long time to get here, and I slip sometimes. And there's also a real pleasure, joy, and solidity, a sort of an I amness in it that is quite profound, new, and calling me forward in kind of unexpected ways. And so I'm grateful to have lived this long in order to experience this.
It's for me really it's a shift. It's a paradigm shift, and somehow for me personally, age 35 to 65 was sort of one long big hunk, you know, and I didn't think about getting older. It was all the same. Okay, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing this, you know. And in the last 10 years, there's been this shift to, oh my gosh, you know, I am old. People look at me and think of me as old, you know. And because personally, I don't really think about how old I am as a thing or a label for myself, but I've noticed that there is a way that people respond. I mean, the first time I think I experienced obvious age reaction was I applied for work as a bond trader in San Francisco. And I could tell from the moment I went into the interview that I was old. I was 45. And they were just like, you know, and I went back to the person who was a bond dealer, and I said, you know, it didn't work very well. Because he had encouraged me to go, because he said, you know more than most of those guys in the bond trading, you know, you should go do this. And I said, you know, it's just not going to happen. The reality is I'm 45 and I am too old. I mean, they can't, there's not a connection for them, for me being in their presence. And that was the first time I experienced an obvious, blatant ageism in the work environment. I had already 20 years before experienced racial prejudice, so reverse racial prejudice. So, and it was, this is how things have changed, and I hope we keep changing things. So this was 1969, and I applied to teach at San Francisco State, not yet a university then, but and they said to me, well, you know, if you were Chinese or, you know, Asian or from Mexico, we could hire you, but I hope you understand that we can't hire you right now. And I was like, what? So things have changed. No one would ever say something like that in this day and age. So there is a lot of awareness, and I think that if we keep having forums like this, we will expand the vision of conscious aging and the awareness of citizens who are more advanced in years as part of the general community. I really like how
Not my phone this time.
Not mine either. I'm infamous for having the phone.
But you know, it is interesting because I work with a group that used to call themselves the Young Entrepreneurs, and that was 10 years ago, and they're all turning 40, and they're like, I'm like, you really should change this. And they're like, yeah, but we don't want a bunch of old people coming out that want to play bingo. And I'm like, hello, how old are the entrepreneurs in this city? Well, the entrepreneurs are in their 50s. And why are they working as entrepreneurs? Because there is ageism in the workplace. So we're just going, the chances of a woman in her 50s being hired is less than 50%. So you have to create your own success and be strong and be confident and figure out your gift and get out there, whether it's volunteering or paid. We got a long runway ahead. So just knock down those kids. And I gave them quite a good luck. And we've now changed it from young entrepreneurs to your entrepreneurs.
Very nice.
Oh, good.
That's how you get it done. Don't put up with it.
Congratulations. That's how we do it. That's why we do what Heidi was talking about, making those cultural changes by being in the place that we are and making those changes. Heidi, you there?
I'm still here. I'm waiting for you, and I think Kyrie might have had less speaking time. So we are near to the end, and I would give everybody, actually, but mainly you, the occasion, the opportunity to say something.
It's just been really interesting to listen. It's been a conversation that's definitely been up in my cohort too, of like, how do we do culture change? I do a lot of work with Dr. Bill Thomas, which I don't know if any of you are familiar with, but he was really a spearheader of the culture change movement in long-term care, and then recently said culture change is dead. So it's just interesting. But I guess as I'm listening, I just sort of am getting the sense of, like most things in life, it's not a binary of is it internal or external, but it's a both and solution of we need to make these changes internally. And it's really important, as Kimberly said, to recognize the systems that are in place because of the way things were previously, and to make sure that we do the work to dismantle them. And, I'm watching a lot of people like struggle with that. It's interesting, as Zara was saying, that happened to her at SF State. And actually just recently there was an opportunity that I wasn't selected for because they were trying to create a really diverse cohort of people, and they already had, you know, 2 people that fit the demographic that I would fall in. But for me, I feel like, and that's just personally for me, I feel like I was fine with that because they were so open about it, and because I understand that part of owning the privilege that I've been given in life is knowing that sometimes I'm not going to get opportunities that I would have gotten, you know, because I want a world where there is more equality and where things change. And I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I think we do have to experiment both personally, but also really own the systemic culture that exists and help dismantle it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say dismantle, that sounds for me a little bit like taking the coat off and then nothing is left. I would prefer to say change it.
Remantle.
Remantle, yeah.
Dismantle. I love that, Heidi.
Yeah, because in German, a mantle is a coat, you know, and when you dismantle, you make it naked, and then, oops, you might take the wrong clothes.
The same way you, like, you know, embraced your naked body in the mirror. Maybe the naked body is what we need. We need the coat to come off so we can embrace the natural beauty that's there.
I have to resist the typical male comment. That's just what I've been waiting for, you know? But anyway, I just want to end up by saying I've been listening like a little mouse in the corner some of the time today. And it has brought up some instances in my past where I have felt discriminated against. In this case, because I was white, when about age 50 or so, there was no place to go in my profession. It was just changing so rapidly. And so for a while, I applied for a lot of state civil service jobs in Wisconsin. And I always did well on these exams, and no one was interested. And so I fudged and told them I was Black, and got a job instantly, you know? And it took them a year to figure out that I wasn't Black. You know, it's just ridiculous. You know, it had nothing to do with any individualness about me that I got the job.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it was a great job, but I could certainly do it. You know, and these things just happen, and there's this continual play between we as individuals and society, which is stumbling around and reacting and trying to find a rational way forward. And we get so many strange little corners we can fall into. That's all. It's been great listening.
We can dismantle the labels though, right, Heidi?
Yes.
Okay, everybody, a closing word?
Well, perhaps dismantling the labels might lead to unexpected revolutions. Who knows?
I think when I was studying culture, we didn't really want necessarily super disruptive, but a transformation, and culture normally takes a full generation. So I think that if we deal with cultural across generations about ageism, and just like we had that guest speaker a while ago that said, the kids found the old people so patient and wonderful. So if we can just sort of even out our transformation and generation, I think we might go a long way. And thank you, Heidi and Mark, for what you do. It's just beautiful and fantastic.
Yeah, I just have gratitude for the group being brought together and just for these discussions taking place. It's really been cool to watch in the past couple of years how many more of these conversations seem to be happening than even when I first got interested in this stuff. So, thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for. I appreciate being invited, and it's good that you're making this initiative, that you're doing this. I appreciate the time.
Yes, thank you, Heidi and Margaret. It's just, this is a very, very interesting discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you all to have followed the call and came in.
Yep.
Thank you, Heidi and Mark. I didn't say that, and I appreciate very much being invited. Thank you.
Well, thank you all, really.
Yeah, because without you, we would have to say something, and that would be a problem.
Makes the hour so much longer when that happens. Yes.
Yeah. No, it's really, for me, it's a learning opportunity. It's also always inspiring to get to know you, get your different views, which they were not so super different today, I thought. But still, it is a confirmation that we can do something and that we can find also new allies. And I hope we somehow keep connected and do some more together. That would be really fun.
Yes,
so at this point, I also thank the viewers, the live viewers, there were some here, and the future viewers on YouTube, because this will be forever on YouTube, even when we have some more of these. Anyway, thank you very, very much. Yeah. And we will continue with the series probably in October or November.
Yeah.
Things considered. And if we find enough guests who want to talk about this taboo thing, you know.
We have to talk until it's not taboo.
Yeah, exactly. So I will count on you, everybody. And also viewers, come on and connect with us. And if you want to chime in, you are welcome.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye and thank you.